Oh, maybe that's why. Neil, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Go out of here. Can you hear me? I see my voice coming through. Let me turn you on. Talk now.
Hey, everybody.
I see you
Can
talking,
you
but I can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, this sucks. How am I going to do this? Audio. Oh, audio output none. Oh. Now I got my headphones on. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Hello, hello.
You're talking.
Yep.
Talk. Yep.
Hello, hello.
But I'm
Check,
still
check.
not hearing it, even though I just turned my headphones on here. What the hell is going on? Audio. Headphones built in. Try again. Again.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, that's not working. Not on mute. Again.
Hello.
Oh, this sucks. Okay. All right, I'm just going to go with the MacBook speakers and hopefully, fingers crossed, this is going to work. All right, how about now?
Check mic. Hello.
Okay, something is weird. Something's up. I can't get any audio out, even with my any audio setting on 2 computers. I don't know what to do.
Okay.
How am I going to know? I'm turned on. My volume's turned on. Oh, let me get my audio settings on here. This sucks, man. Damn it. Output. Let me turn Bluetooth off. My Bluetooth off. MacBook Air speakers. Output. Output. All right, speak again. Oh, I know what it is. Try again.
Hello, hello.
Try again.
Hey, everybody. We're getting
Again.
going.
Oh, yes. God damn. Okay. I'm on a different computer. Now we got to figure out. I'm going to open an incognito on my big computer. Whew, that was close. All right. So, how are we going to know when it actually starts? I mean, it is. We are streaming now. It is live, but I don't know if it's actually started. It probably has. No, because it hasn't the bottom of the hour yet. That's right. So we're still in the green room, if you would. Put my code in. 425035. Let's see. 425035. Okay, that doesn't work because my resend code. 69657. Okay, I see it. It says we're live. And it's 10:30.
Everybody.
Hello, is anybody there? Hello, hello.
I think it'd probably be good to get started here in just a minute.
Yeah, for sure. Just trying to make sure that we have people that were actually accessible here. It should show people.
Hey, if you're just joining us, share in the chat where you're calling in from. We'd love to hear and interact with you as we go on and answer some questions through the chat as well.
Oh, good. Awesome. Good deal. Well, we're just at 10:30, so we'll give it another couple minutes and then we will get rolling with our presentation.
Thanks for joining, Mark. Not sure if you're getting the cold weather up your way or you're enjoying some of the spring-like weather we're having down south. I know, Charles, you're in New Orleans, so it's pretty balmy near you, huh?
75
Yep.
today, and let's see, 75 today, and it was snowing. Was it last week? 10 days ago or something like that. So
It's modern weather for you.
yeah. Are we in the right? Yeah, let's go ahead and get started here with today's presentation. So thanks everybody for joining. I'm Charles Handler. I've got Neil Morelli with me, someone I've worked with quite a bit, and really excited to talk to you all today about the mistakes that are possibly causing you problems and how we can provide some wisdom to help you avoid those mistakes. So let's get going, and we'll be co-presenting, so we'll kind of be bouncing back and forth. Just a quick introduction. I'm an PhD in IO psychology, been practicing, I don't know, probably 25, almost 30 years with employee selection, and now have really taken my practice of helping organizations put in place legally sound, business savvy, candidate friendly assessments and showing their value. And of course, AI has become a big part of my life now, professionally and personally, actually. So, really looking forward to sharing some wisdom about what I've learned and what Neil and I have been practicing together.
Yeah, and hey everybody, I'm Neil Morelli. I am also an IO psychologist, and I've been in a product leadership role within several talent assessment platform companies, including Codility and others. And so I've really been working at this intersection of technology and talent acquisition for quite a while, and looking forward to sharing some of the observations that we've made now as we're entering the latest technology transformation, AI, and how it's impacting what we do from a recruiting and hiring standpoint. So looking forward to sharing a little bit more about any of that thought leadership at the kind of the crossroads of technology talent acquisition.
Yeah,
Good to
we
be
had
here.
a lot of fun putting this together. We learned a lot, actually, I believe, as we did it, and really looking forward to sharing. So, what are we going to cover? Context is everything, and decisions. I think we'll really have this talk track today that decisions are your own, and for us to say make this decision or that decision in a very specific way is not what we want to do. It doesn't serve you well at all. But we are going to provide some context, and from that context, we'll really start talking about how that can lead to our big reveal of mistakes. And I think a really fun exercise, we'll do a case study that kind of wraps up our thinking and what we think you all should be thinking about. So very interactive, and we're looking forward to that. And the headline today, this is I love Dali and AI for graphics generation. It's actually a way to see how far we've come with it. It's because this is, this didn't take me many prompts to get the spelling and the language and the words right is always been the trick. It's getting so much better. But our headlines is, putting tools before strategy is a big problem. It's very, very easy to do. We sympathize quite a bit with this because, everybody's tempted to do it, and there is value in the tools. We're not saying that at all. But as far as how you look at this, how you look at AI, and how you look at your strategies, it's really, really important to back up and not get excited about a bright, shiny object that's going to solve, your problems for you, or says it's going to. So.
And Charles, you're a car guy, so this image is I know close to you and a good reflection of your background and interest too. Yeah,
sure. I created it in my own image, except running into a pothole is what I try to avoid. But
we need to see this bumper sticker, or hey, the reverse of it on a bumper sticker on one of your cars in the future. You should send us a picture of that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. But you need tools to work on cars. But even there, you have to have a strategy first. There's what we call chasing parts, which is where you're just trying to replace everything without really diagnosing what the problem is, right? And serving the highest level also, right? When we think about strategy and we think about why are we here? What's the point of what we're doing? And this is what I call the prime directive of talent acquisition, right? The highest level goal, everything you're serving to do is making sure that you have the right talent in the right place at the right time, right? And that you move that talent. I mean, once you hire, it's a continuum to talent management. It still has this mission, but in talent acquisition, one of the interesting things is you're dealing with an unknown entity for the most part, right? You see the tip of the iceberg. You see the best that a person is putting forth. If you're lucky to get those best people in front of you instead of getting what we call, false positives, where you have moved forward people that, look good, or the other way, false negatives, where you're eliminating people who actually are good. So this is what we want to do. This is why we're here. This is what brings people into an organization to ultimately execute the mission of that organization, and also help people have a good experience at work and get a lot out of work. And when I think about why do I do what I do, what's the satisfaction I get? It's the value and the happiness of putting people in jobs where they can be successful and it's inherently meaningful to them, and at the same time helping them create value.
Yeah, so it's a great reminder of the why of talent acquisition, what we're all here to do, and sort of that overarching goal and objective. There are specific objectives within sort of the HR playbook and plan for 2025 that are related to talent acquisition that we wanted to point out. So here are just a few of them from this really helpful report. So these are the top 10 objectives for HR in 2025. You can see 4 of them are closely related to talent acquisition. So it's not just the big picture of why we're here, but we're also here to help achieve the objectives and goals for the wider HR function and for the business itself. It's just good to keep those in mind, that this all matters, and figuring these questions out is really important.
Absolutely. And then on the next slide, you can see, I think this is a really powerful slide to me. When I saw it, I was like, wow, I hadn't really seen this before. And it fits completely with the feeling, that I get, which is, we're in a place where AI readiness, and Neil will talk about this a lot, although doesn't necessarily mean that you are in the right place with AI readiness when you're looking at adopting these tools. But you can see screening and assessment algorithms is pretty much the biggest increase over where it was before. It's 33%, just like recruiting chatbots, but it already started further along. And it's interesting that recruiting chatbots are in here, because we'll talk a little bit about how they are almost like the gateway drug in some sense to some of the other things that you're going to be, having to deal with. But the idea of the, screening algorithms gaining so much traction that they're almost in the majority phase within a year. And this is a pretty credible research. Like, I really enjoyed this report. It has quite a bit of good information in it about this stuff, but the trend is undeniable. And you can see that the hiring aspect of this is dominating the growth, right?
Mm.
And we're seeing that now, even in a weird, wonky economy or world situation where you're having, we'll talk about it, too few people with the skills you want, but too many applicants. And how are we dealing with some of these things? It's just interesting to see the increase in tool set, and one wonders if there's an increase in strategy that goes along with it. I'm not really sure about that. Our goal is to help make sure that there is that, right?
Yeah, and it's easy for us to say, think about your strategy, have a strategy before you start thinking about tools and you start bringing them into your practice and to your operations. But we need to talk about what strategy even is. It's such a fuzzy word. It gets thrown around a lot. So we thought a combination of ChatGPT and our own experience would help us with a definition just to kind of wrap our heads around. And I like this one. Strategy is a deliberate, overarching plan that aligns goals, resources, and actions to achieve desired outcomes. That's all great. Another way to think about it is that strategy is a decision-making framework. It's really explaining the what and the why, and then leaving the tactics of the how just to those things. So we're not thinking that this is a step-by-step action plan. This is the why. What are we trying to achieve with the limited resources that we have in the face of a quickly changing environment and the resistance of competitors and other market forces that are creating these headwinds and creating friction with all the different things that we're trying to do. How do we operate within that environment? Well, we need a good strategy. We need a good why. And how are we going to help move the business forward with the talent side of what we're doing? So I think it's good just to think about this definition and put it out there so we're all considering that strategy is our decision-making framework and ultimately answering the question, why?
Yep, absolutely. It's such a word that gets thrown around. I think that's really, for me, it's so easy to say that. And if you look at the literature out there, the marketing, whatever, everybody's talking about it. It is obviously very important. But I just don't know if the term is actually executed in the way that it should be most of the time. And again, if you look at the kind of marketing materials of the ecosystem, strategy is probably mentioned a million times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And certainly those tools can support strategy 100%. But is that who you want dictating your strategy, right? So we'll talk again. We're going to keep talking about that. And there's a lot of pressure out there. There's a lot of pressure. If you're in an organization now or ever, the pressure to perform, pressure to manage the labor market, and what's the impact that has, right? These pressures are, in some sense, are creating obstacles, blockages to your prime directive. And we'll talk about why that is, as far as, well, honestly, it's no surprise because it pushes you into making mistakes, right? And so the pressures are creating a situation where, for instance, you think you need to have AI. Everybody's using it. We know it has some positive impact. If we're not using it, we're losing out. And well, we might as well just grab it as a fire hose and be able to try and put out fires that are happening because it's a fast solution that offers a lot. So there's this reactionary state of, okay, we got to get this stuff in. We got to get this stuff in fast. It's going to help all these problems that are, keeping needles in the red and keeping everybody kind of screaming. When you move into what the market looks like, again, so many promises, so many solutions that just make it look simple. Just flip this switch and all your troubles are going to go away. There's quite a bit of that. It's just the reality we live in. So how in the heck do you make any determinations of what the best thing is, whose solution or product is better than another's, and how does that fit in your strategy, especially when you're really feeling that pressure to act, right? It's good that there's so many options, but it's also bad. There's the one of the biggest things I see happening that I think is one of the most dangerous is what I call the efficiency trap. That is, you get involved, as you saw before, recruiting chatbot, candidate communication, inviting candidates to apply for the job, to schedule for an interview. These are all efficiency things that have very low risk and can actually help your brand and your candidate experience, because essentially you're able to keep candidates engaged, which everybody wants to do. Even if it's a synthetic tool, an AI tool, I believe candidates would appreciate some communication versus none. And it's also about how you position it as well. If you say, hey, we have so many applicants, we want to make sure we can engage with you. And so we use this technology to help make sure that we can give you a chance to even get recognized. And then a talk track that I'm on really in a concerted way this year is skills-based hiring. And I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with that, right? You're really wanting to future-proof. How do we make sure we reskill, upskill, hire for skills? And we need to stockpile those skills. Like, we need to really make sure that we're bringing in the right skills, organizing those skills. If we're not doing that, we're losing out. All the market messages, everybody says it's all about skills. How are we going to make sure we manage skills? So we better put a skills-based hiring approach in place, or a tool that does that, because this is how we're going to solve that problem. Check that box, right? So I think any talent professional can feel this pain, can see that these are things that are happening for them, every day, and are helping really drive decision making. Should they be? Probably not. They're part of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of the market madness, we wanted to show a market map that does a pretty good job of showing you the full purview of HR technology that's out there. I mean, not all of these are AI vendors or AI first companies per se, but many, many of them are incorporating and bringing AI online within their product set in greater and greater numbers. So in some ways, all of these companies, most of these companies are AI companies. So there is a market madness here. It's hard to navigate. It is creating pressure. It is creating FOMO that Charles mentioned. It is offering an efficiency boost in ways that we'll talk about can lead to mistakes. So it's good just to, have this general impression that the market is really hard to navigate. So it's important to have that strategy as that North Star to make sure you can know where to go and who to work with and in what ways. There's not only the top level or sort of widest angle view of the market. There's also a little bit more of a more refined market, where we have another couple of market maps here that show you just some more AI first, AI specific vendors in the recruiting space. Some of them are newer entrants, just even over the past couple of years. And Charles, if you want to go to the next one, I think that will show some of those. Just as a for instance, these are not exhaustive market maps, but they are helpful to keep some of these things in mind. As okay, here are the players, here are the voice agents as far as Andreessen Horowitz is concerned, and for a recruiting use case, here are the decision support systems, the DEI tools, industry specific tools, sourcing, which we talked about just a little bit already, and we'll talk about more. These are the newer AI entrants in the recruiting space. So we have to have a perspective around this. Otherwise, how do you evaluate these vendors and know how to best partner with them to get the outcomes that you're looking for?
Yeah. And, I keep a market, like a database of folks out there that, provide these services and products. And it's just grown incredibly. It started out as an assessment database, assessment provider database, but what it's become is I call it predictive hiring tool. Anybody who's saying, hire this person is a good match, we're going to evaluate signal from people, is really functioning as an assessment. And now there's so many of these options. And if you look at the funding for this, just AI funding in general is insane. HR tech AI funding is, even when people say, oh, it's so hard to get funding these days, there's so much money being pumped into this. It's incredible. So, it's a thing. And the more this happens, the more difficult it can be. You can see some of the things. These are direct, of course, the names have been changed to protect the innocent here, but these are absolute, direct, real things that people are claiming, vendors are claiming, right? It's all about revolutionizing things and, you know, making things easier, making things more precise, helping you be able to, overcome the kind of obstacles that we've talked about. And of course, AI being a central part of this, right? And that's not going away. I mean, at some point, every company involved in hiring is going to be an AI company in some sense. And in our industry, in the assessment industry, proper, that I think both of us kind of branched out with our messages in practice because of the things we're talking about. But I don't know that the traditional way these things are looked at is going to be the same in the future at all. And so we all have to prepare for that on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, we just wanted to summarize this context, the first act, if you will, with a little figure. So we have the prime directive, what we're all here to do if we're working in TA. We know that there are obstacles to doing that. These are obstacles that will probably always be obstacles to some extent. We're always looking for the right candidates with limited knowledge. We're always dealing with a changing hyperdynamic market of vendors. We're always trying to understand what the underlying skills are. That's essentially, our sort of atomic unit to understand, is this person ready for the job and who should we pick? But these obstacles create pressures on all of us as leaders, and these pressures turn into mistakes. And we're not here to say, here are all the mistakes that you're making and how dare you. We're saying that we're all subject to these types of mistakes because of the obstacles and pressures in light of what we're trying to do from a big picture. So now we want to transition into talking through some of the common mistakes that we've seen through years and years of deploying and implementing HR technology, especially on the TA side, with a little bit of intentional wisdom to help sort of remedy or avoid these mistakes in the future. So now we're going to get into the first of 4 mistakes that we tend to see.
And I just to piggyback on that, Neil and I, as putting this together, we had, okay, how do we provide a prescription, a remedy for each mistake and tell people exactly, how do you specifically avoid that mistake? And as we thought about it, we're like, well, everybody's situation's different, and how you deal with things has such a different context that for us to just throw up a bunch of bullet points about here's what you need to do. We all know when you walk away from a presentation, especially nowadays with so much information overload, you're not going to remember everything. And if we give you a list of things, go do this, it's not going to be as meaningful. So we've played the guru role here a little bit, and you'll see in our prognostications and in our prescriptions here, it's more about equipping you with a mindset and a mantra, really, to be able to work through these problems or avoid actually having these problems. So here's our reveal. We've been promoting mistakes. Now we're going to show what they are.
Yeah. So mistake number 1, there's a couple moving pieces to this one, but it's essentially thinking about how we're scaling any kind of hiring process with AI tools without first doing some experimentation. And I'll talk a little bit about what that means. But essentially, another way to think about this mistake is to miss the creeping normality that comes with AI features and AI capabilities. So this is, think of it as the boiling frog in the pot, which, it's going to, just kind of spring up on us. You're not going to realize that you're in the boiling pot until you've already been in there for a little while. And the reason I say that is because tools, any kind of technology system, is always going to add new features to differentiate itself, to stay competitive in the market. There's an impetus and incentive to continually be adding things. And especially with now the new capabilities of AI, how easy it is to incorporate it into so many different products. The mistake or the tendency is that you're going to scale your hiring process with tools without really understanding your requirements that get surfaced and get highlighted through experiments that you haven't yet done. And when you do that, when you say step from, well, I'm just going to use this tool to manage my candidates. I'm using it to manage, how we're interacting with them, say through some smart ATS features. Well, now suddenly that platform is offering ways to engage with candidates. So it's helping you handle the outreach and the messaging and the replies and the scheduling. But these are all good things to help save you time and the efficiency. And we're not saying never use those, but we're saying be mindful that unless you've done some experimentation, maybe in some low stake experimentation on your end to say, what are the right messages? What are the ways that we want to make decisions around that candidate outreach? Or how do we deal with different replies? You're going to just start this slow, kind of steady process, even without knowing it, into a place where now suddenly the AI is doing matching for you. It's doing some sort of decision making or pseudo decision making without ever realizing it. So this is what we want to be mindful of, that you should do some kind of experimentation first before you start scaling, and just being aware of this creepy normality idea. But doing experimentation before scaling doesn't mean necessarily just asking the vendor to complete a formal pilot. I know that's a move that we're all very familiar with, and that's not exactly what I'm saying. That's essentially outsourcing or making experimentation a requirement for your vendor, not an internal competency in motion that you are used to as a team. So I'm talking more about experimenting in some small way, maybe through some basic prototyping or through some other kind of low stakes experiments to really evaluate whether or not you're ready to scale in the ways that the vendor or the technology is offering. So insourcing that, bringing that in-house. It's also not asking just one team saying, oh, well, so-and-so team is worrying about that, procurement's worrying about that, or whatnot, or we're going to kind of get a referral from someone to figure out, well, what's their experiment? It's not also deferring to just one other group to give you those inputs and signals about that and to learn what you need to learn. It's bringing it in-house again. And then the other thing is not using the need to experiment first as an excuse not to scale. So sometimes we get proofs of concept stood up, but we never move to that scaling phase. Experimentation, low stakes experimentation is critical before you scale, but the idea is to get buy-in and to figure out what's working so that you can scale to move to that next phase and have an idea about that, what's going to work. Essentially, the experiments help you create that requirement set, which then supports you for success in the scaling phase. So that's a little bit of the rationale and what this mistake is not. I think this next figure, and maybe Charles, you can speak to this as well, helps illustrate this and visualize it a little bit too. And I really like this. If you want to go to the next one, this this matrix here.
I'm driving. I forgot all about that. I thought, yeah. So this is something I created, and I'll just say, just as a transition here, before I explain this, bunch of pretty colored circles here. It's really interesting in that the efficiency side of sourcing and being able to bring a pre-vetted group of candidates is so attractive that I think you often overlook that, oh, how well is this working? How is it working, et cetera, because you really need, again, to solve that pressure. And the pressure being, oh my gosh, we have too many applicants, but yet we don't have enough skilled applicants. Well, being able to do some matching and vetting and streamlining the flow is a very valuable thing. We could all agree on that, but it's just going in a direction. I think Salesforce does for sure, and I think it was Oracle. They're already starting to launch agents, and recruiting agents are on the list. So if you can imagine at a point in the future, maybe the not too distant future, just having, maybe it's even an avatar, a persona that's helping you. We're all going to have digital coworkers at some point. Say, go hire me, a full stack developer for this role. And at some point, these things are going to be doing that. I think the human touch is obviously going to be important. So it might be go find, screen, and vet 3 candidates or something to bring to me, and then interview them, and then I'll talk to them too or something. That's coming. And it's going to get a lot more complicated than what we're looking at now. Like, we should actually appreciate the simplicity in some weird sense of what we're dealing with now. So we got to prepare. We got to do the reps to get there. I put this together for an AI assessment presentation I did. What you're looking at here is the concept that the most commonly used tools for predictive hiring, I'll call it, have a high level of automation and a high level of complexity, which put them in the highest risk category, not only for bias and lack of actual substance in what they're doing, but in the accuracy of what they're delivering as well. And these are the tools we're talking about. And you can see as it kind of gets closer to the tried and true assessment tools, which are typically low level of automation and a low level of complexity, especially comparatively or relative to the others, you're in a lower risk zone. So the most popular thing has the highest risk. The things we know work have a lower risk are not as popular, and I think that trend is going to keep happening.
And I think this is really interesting, Charles. It's counterintuitive because what I hear most is that any kind of AI evaluation on the assessment side, that's the highest risk, but it's fine if we use it to go find people that will enter the funnel and all of that. And what you're saying is actually that maybe that scalability and through the automation on the sourcing side, even though it is more complex than meets the eye, is actually a riskier proposition than a tool that can help you on the assessment side. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think I always come back to this AI or not. Hiring is a numbers game and a game of probability. And so if you don't stock the funnel, if you don't bring into the funnel, let's say plaid people, you're trying to hire plaid people because you don't have enough. If you don't bring enough of them in, you can't get blood from a rock. And the more that there's bias at each step, the less likely you're going to be to find those people. So the numbers game dictates that getting the most of the right people in at the very beginning is going to help you all along the way, because you might have the best assessment program on the planet, but if the field of people you're looking to hire is very minimal, you're going to have less a harder time hiring those people. It just makes intuitive sense. That kind of description makes my job easier because everybody can understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this mantra, as Charles was saying earlier, this is something that we thought would share that is fairly generalizable to lots of different contexts, but it essentially says what we were saying earlier. You need to define your needs with clarity before the tool shapes your strategy instead of serving it. So you let that pot slowly boil. It's going to then create the strategy for you on your behalf, maybe without even realizing that you then need to back into at a later time. So having those need requirements and those requirements dictated and understood through some good experimentation first gives you that clarity so that you can then say, here's what we need to the tool and to the capabilities, and make that good match there.
Yeah. Right. So the next piece, I could talk about this on a whole entire other presentation, which I'm most likely will be doing sometime in the near future, but it's all about skills-based. It's such a buzzword, and it's not a bad one. In fact, it's very laudable to be looking at skills-based hiring. But what is even the definition of skills-based hiring? That varies quite a bit. What is the definition of a skill? That varies, quite a bit. When you're not all calibrated on what a skill is and how to define it, it's going to be pretty hard to hit that mark, right? And if you're just aligning with a vendor that says we do skills-based hiring, use skills-based hiring through our tool, and you're going to solve all these problems. We want tools that can do that. Absolutely. But there's some things that skills-based hiring is not that I think it's promoted as, right? So replacing resumes with an assessment, not a problem. That's actually a really good idea. Is that skills-based hiring? It's part of skills-based hiring, but unless everything else in the organization is aligned to that, it's going to be difficult. So do you have a skills-based organization? What does that even mean, right? I think in my mind, that means that the skills that you've defined have been really set up in a measured way that you can understand the whole continuum, the whole pathway of what those skills look like, how those skills grow, how someone needs to grow a specific skill, through reskilling, upskilling. Those words also get thrown around a lot. They do make sense, but again, it's part of a talent management, talent acquisition, unified strategy around a set of something that you've actually, defined. And it can be very hard. So the pressure to say we want to be equitable, We don't necessarily want to look at resumes. We know those are biased, although I will tell you that AI-based hiring matching tools function in a significant way off of resumes. Yes, those things may not, may block out names and things that might actually be indicative of, something that would trigger a subjective decision. But we don't know that for sure. We don't really know what's going on in there. But if you're, so you've got that to deal with. And it's just not always as easy as making that choice. And I've seen that in my own practice a lot before. I've seen it where an organization wants to do skills-based hiring, a study that I was part of that I won't go into. And once the leadership agreed to it, we tried to put it into the TA operations, and they wouldn't modify the process. They couldn't modify the process with the tools that they had, et cetera. So it was a no-go. Even though we tried to do it, it couldn't work, right? The other thing that I think is really, really important here is, and I've seen this up close in some work I'm doing right now, where we're looking at skills labels coming in through an API from, a provider that's doing talent intelligence, multiple providers. And what you get is kind of a jumble of skills, and the skills are just tags, little labels. There's no operational definition. A lot of times they're not grouped properly. You can have skills that make no sense coming through. I've seen that quite a bit. So, just relying on these labels is not going to get you anywhere. That's not skills-based hiring. And those may not honestly even be skills. So it's all about the validation and verification of skills. And this is not an easy nut to crack. Of all the things we're talking about, just all of a sudden making a shift to skills-based hiring right away skills-based organization, rather, it's not something you can just dive into right away. So in some sense, yes, doing some of these things is a valuable piece of the strategy. But unless you have a roadmap and you can see, okay, replacing resumes with fit scores is going to do, or assessments is going to get us here. But what comes after that? How do we use that data? How does that feed into our overall strategy, right? So for me, again, we had a lot of fun with ChatGTP, kind of putting our ideas in there and having it give us these kind of, sage-like pieces of ancient wisdom, I guess, right? So I really like this one. I modified it a little, but in general, ChatGTP did an amazing job of saying that, a skill is not a skill without purpose, and it is a step without direction. Sorry, I minced that up quite a bit. You're reading it, you can understand what I'm saying, right? You've really got to make sure that you define these things and what's relevant for you, and you utilize them in a way that puts you on the path to success.
Yeah, so we were talking about understanding your needs more deeply, and then understanding what direction you want to go, having a good idea of the skills. I don't think we came up with these mistakes in a linear fashion, but I think they do connect to one another. Let's say you have a good understanding of your needs and your requirements and the skills that you want to target. Well, before you adopt any kind of technology, especially at scale, it's important to understand how ready your culture and your climate is for that technology. So a big mistake that we tend to see is that people turn a blind eye to their readiness, especially when it comes to AI readiness. So an organization that's not ready will reject any technology, full stop. It doesn't matter if it's AI, it doesn't matter if it's a new assessment platform. If the organization, the team, wherever it's being deployed is not ready for it, people will not use it. People will be hyper skeptical of it. People will have unmet expectations of it. And it could be the best technology in the world. No one will use it. It'll waste a lot of time and money. So understanding the readiness provides the necessary information to know where new technology has the best chance of success. In other words, if you have a good sense of your team's readiness, you can say, well, hey, this application of this technology and its capabilities is probably a step too far. Why don't we dial it back a little bit? Why don't we start with something a little bit simpler where we do know that there is a good chance of success that in adoption, because our culture and our climate will accept it and is at a good place for it. And there's some different ways to do this, and we'll talk a little bit about how you can start to think about this in just a moment. But AI readiness in particular is not just this one-time evaluation. Oh yeah, we're overall pretty ready for this. We know that no one's particularly threatened. Their skills aren't threatened. Their jobs aren't threatened by new AI technology. We know our hiring managers feel supported and equipped, and there's good communication and good messaging around the use of the tool. So we're ready, and we'll always be ready. That could ebb and flow. So having some idea of what this looks like, especially over time, can be very, very helpful. AI readiness is also not just a function of having access to tools. So everyone having to see, okay, we're ready from a technology standpoint, or maybe we even have a good policy set in place. No, the readiness is deeper than that. It understands the things that are inhibiting or holding people back from adopting new technology, especially AI, and the things that are motivating to them, the things that the organization, you as a team, are helping your hiring managers understand about what the AI's role is in the hiring process and how it maybe complements them or augments what they're doing or saves them a step. Same thing on your recruiter side. So it's not just the technology and the governance piece, it's also the cultural, environmental piece too.
Yeah. And I would bring, I know you got an awesome model on the next slide. One thing, and it honestly just popped into my head when you're talking about this. So is the idea of psychological safety, right? In the
Yep.
workplace, people that are your employees, they could be inherently even love using generative AI and all that, but there's still this kind of creepiness or uncertainty about it. And if employees don't have a voice, don't have an engagement with it, that psychological safety dimension can be greatly diminished. And nobody wants a workplace where that happens. I mean, the things we've talked about of, harmony in the workplace and productivity and personal satisfaction and fulfillment, those aren't happening if the psychological safety factor is not there. So that's something to really, keep in mind. And Neil,
I'm glad you said that, Charles, because that is really baked into this idea of AI readiness, which is a piece of a overall adoption framework that we've incorporated into an AI for HR mastermind program that I'm launching and running. And while we don't have time to unpack all of this, I did want to show the sequence of steps here, or the sequence of thinking from taking those business and talent needs, essentially your strategy, as we've been talking about, then sort of filtering the different ways you want to accomplish that strategy with jobs to be done and say, okay, what are we ready for? So that's sort of establishing or understanding your cultural environmental readiness and say, okay, do we have good psychological safety? Do we have good systems that will support new technology? Then it's a matter of breaking down that job into pieces and matching it to the right technology. So that AI readiness is really a really important filter on this whole model. And once people understand that, they can take a strategy that then dictates the jobs to be done and have the AI readiness in mind as this environmental backdrop. It's kind of like understanding, okay, I'm going to get a new fish. I'm going to add it to my fish tank. Is the water the right pH level? Is it the right salinity? Is it the right temperature? Or, is the fish going to die, or is it going to swim? Is it going to be rejected by the environment that you're putting into?
I could never keep the
Same
fish
kind of thing.
alive.
You have personal experience with that, huh, Charles? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So we're swimming in this water, and it's important to know if it's conducive to what we're doing. With that said, here's the next mantra, and we want to make sure we've got a little bit of time for questions. You need to understand your organization's readiness for technology takes root only where the culture is prepared to embrace it. So there's our little sage piece of advice here. Any technology, especially AI, can only take root where the culture is ready for it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of companies are looking at that, and maybe, or more and more, you see chief AI officer. I saw somebody the other day with the title chief people AI officer, which I thought was really cool. I reached out to her and said, "Hey, I've never seen anybody who has that. What do you do?" So this last one is one that, again, I've given whole presentations on this before, but the idea, and we've talked about it thematically throughout the presentation, is that you don't want vendors dictating your strategy. And yeah, products are great. I mean, we're not here to bash vendors at all. It's just about how you relate to them. And if you are following, hey, let us set your strategy for you, and there's no real governance there's not a framework of evaluation. We have a little case study here in a second that's going to kind of, I think, bring home some things that might resonate personally with folks on the call today, on the presentation today. But you've got to do your own research. You've got to use a framework that provides some structure as to, okay, what are they doing? How are they doing it? And does it fit with not only regulations, and that's a shifting sand, so we know that's kind of difficult, but what are our own internal guideposts, our own internal, uh, rules, and our own oversight, really, governance that you create, right? It's more and more on companies to do that themselves, and we hope that organizations do that. So, um, without further ado, here, this is my mantra here, right? Don't let your urgency turn you into a target or give you some mistake. Don't be emotional about your decisions. Personally, that's been one of the best things I've ever done for myself, is stop emotional decision making, right? Diligence is the path to clarity. It takes time. So this is something we'll have in the handouts that we'll put together and post on the LinkedIn site. This is a framework for evaluating vendors. There's a couple of resources that I recommend in the packet where I pulled this from. I don't have time to go over it in detail, but there's various categories. There's various things to look for. You don't always need an AI expert to do this either. There's certain things that you can do on your own. Having someone like Neil or myself involved can always be helpful, of course, and others who are more even technically AI oriented. So, quick case study here. We want to leave some time. This, again, we work to say what would be a familiar situation, something we've heard about, something we know talent acquisition professionals live. So these are some bullet points, but I'm gonna tell the story, and Neil's gonna help with that, of course. You're currently using, so you're a talent acquisition function. You've seen the value of an efficiency relationship type tool for candidate engagement, candidate communication, scheduling, and all that. But you still have a shortage of people with the right skills. This happens a lot in the developer world, right? And a deluge of applicants. Some applicants who may be very qualified, others who are using an auto bot apply tool, which there's several, if not hundreds of those now, that'll send out 40,000 whatever applications on your behalf, right? So the noise is just increased. But in that noise, there are people that you want. They're in there somewhere, and you may think you have a shortage even, but maybe you're just missing those people. That's a very, again, hiring's a numbers game. So you've got the efficiency tool. You have a QBR, right? Your account manager says, "Oh my gosh, we have this new matching tool. It's phenomenal. It's really going to help you with the skill shortage versus applicant overload thing, because you now have a tool to help deliver only qualified people to you, right?" And that sounds very attractive. I mean, that is an immediate pain relief, an immediate thing that is relieving a pressure. But we'll see what might happen. So a lot of times, your operations and technology, they own this technology, right? Your HR tech, your operations, and they're like, "Oh, this is great. We want this." We hear the problems, we hear the cries for help, so we throw this in place. It's already on the platform, right? We're already using some AI with the platform, and that may have been approved, or maybe we just did it. We didn't have any oversight, but there's no due diligence, right? There's no real even AI officer, AI person who should be vetting this. And I think more and more you'll see less of that, but it's often very common, I'm sure. So you've got something in place now, and you're now in the AI skills ranking and matching, business. But when it comes down to, okay, how do we know this thing is working, right? The vendor doesn't have any way to show that. They may have a dashboard that has a few metrics, but is there any substance behind that metrics? Are you doing your own work, right? I mean, that's very important. Do you have a people analytics function that's connecting to this work stream that's collecting that data, who's looking at that, right? And you can end up without that, with this point of view of, oh my gosh, this thing is amazing. It's so helpful. It's so grand. But the reality is, right, we know the story. The emperor has no clothes, right? So the reality is maybe it's not. And everybody's just got this perceptional thing going on because they're seeing what they want to see. So where does that leave you? Because I'll guarantee you this story to some extent has happened many times. So the next one is, go ahead, Neil, if you want to think about this.
Well, yeah, I think we wanted to give you a little bit of a scenario that might seem familiar. I think both of us have experienced this to some extent, and we know that this happens quite a lot. And these are all indications that there's a bit of a tool first mentality going on here rather than the strategy first that we were talking about initially. So some of those details kind of give you those flags, and maybe you see some of those mistakes that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what we're saying is, hey, we need to have a good idea of what problem that we're solving. And maybe there are some ways that we've already tried to attempt to solve this with our own stack, with other types of simpler systems and programs and applications, and our own experimentation to say, this is what we need to do. And here's what we're looking for. And then, we're kind of working through, well, how does the technical capabilities of the tool that you're proposing meet that? How does it fit with the tasks that we need done, or the areas that we've seen some success? And so some of these questions can be good to start processing. Well, how do I think from a strategy first mentality when we're evaluating a system like that? And hopefully some of that happens before you have that new QBR with a new feature that's coming online, and it sounds a little bit it just sounds enticing, and it sounds like something you want to try. But Charles, you have some other things to add here as well.
Yeah, I mean, these are just what I'm thinking is, these are the questions you need to be asking yourself as you're in that scenario, right? It's an awareness thing, right? So why is this thing that we're seeing happening? What's the root cause potentially? And is the solution really the right solution for that root cause? Are there other strategic things? Are there other bigger picture things that we need to do in conjunction with it? Even if the pain is great right now, we still want to get a proper diagnosis, right? And we want to make sure that whatever we're looking at, how does this thing actually work to my evaluation framework, right? And to Neil's thing, are we ready for using this? Does that, from a governance standpoint, from a standpoint of the culture of the organization, and then who's going to look at this thing for us? Is it internal? Is it external? Is it both? Oh, well, this person's selling us this. Are there other things? Maybe not even AI things that we can do, right? And then it's the how do we know it's working? Are we going to put something in place? Are we going to hold anyone accountable to make sure this thing is working? It's just too easy to make that assumption going in with no plan to do it going out. So there are no bad questions here when you're in the case study scenario we're talking about, or any part of it, right? You should not fear asking these questions. Be the contrarian if you need to, right? So
yeah, so we've spent a good amount of time today talking through the mistakes that you're likely to encounter, maybe the things that you're working through now. Maybe you're feeling the after effects of falling into some of these, or not really feeling like you have enough information. But these problems, these pressures, these obstacles, these mistakes that we're all susceptible to will take more time to really understand and come up with the right remedies for. And oftentimes it depends on the context, it depends on those objectives. And so we want to prepare and equip you with more information around remedying these mistakes, or avoiding these mistakes in the future, or equipping your team with the right skills to avoid these mistakes, and to be good consumers of this really wild market and the market madness that we're all seeing. So if you want to learn more about an AI for talent acquisition crash course that would go over a lot of the topics that we've talked about today in further detail, with more action steps and useful tools and templates and guides to kind of walk you through how to put some of these things and these mantras into practice, please just take 1 minute and fill out this quick survey. It's 2 questions, and just helps us understand if you would be interested in learning more about that as it takes shape, and also have a voice in telling us what you'd want to see in on-demand crash course about AI for talent acquisition, instructed by Charles.
With Neil's help.
With my help.
Yeah. And this is just kind of the, how do you get a hold of us? It's pretty obvious because you're here on LinkedIn and we're on LinkedIn. So that's the whole point of LinkedIn. We have the QR code for me is to my Substack, where I post my podcast and various other assets that I create all around predictive hiring. It's called Help Wanted. And of course, my company, where we do practice, implementation, strategy, development, et cetera, around all of this stuff.
Yeah. And I've alluded to this a few times already, but I'm launching a new program, a new mastermind, 4-week program where you learn practical AI skills. You learn more about the adoption framework that I showed previously. We really dig into not just talent acquisition, but lots of HR use cases and HR problems to solve, and how AI can play a role in that and integrate it. And you learn some good experimentation skills with tools that you already have access to. So that's the impetus and sort of the focus of the mastermind. So if you want to learn more about that, would love to have you check out the website with a QR code, and or reach out to me either on LinkedIn or through email here. But looking forward to telling you more about that.
Yeah, we got a few minutes left, so let's see if we got any questions in the chat here. Let's see here. So what we can do is, we're more than happy to, well, obviously we're available through this event page. Will still be up. There'll be a recording of this. We'll have some assets that we post on the page coming up in the next couple of days, and we'll give everybody some time back now, a couple of minutes here. So really appreciate the attention, the interest, and hopefully you've learned something good today that you can carry back. Just remember, you don't have to try and bring every single point we made. It's about these 4 things. It's about thinking about these themes and thematically in what you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.